As we move towards online learning, it's important that we establish some ground rules or at least some expectations around what successful online classrooms actually look like. When you're joining the session, there's a couple of things to think about. The very first one, and this is the little screen that you'll see when you're logging on, when you click on the meeting in your calendar, is to toggle off your camera. That's the first thing. We don't need to see you, especially when there's 25, 26 people in the class. You're not going to see them all anyways. You only see the last 4 people that speak. And it gets distracting. And the reality is the majority of the time, the teacher is actually going to be sharing their screen with you. So just toggle the camera off straight away. It'll also help with bandwidth issues at home if your internet's not fantastic. The second thing to think about is muting your microphone. So you'll see that here in the middle. Just make sure your microphone's turned off, and that's because with 20 people in a room and everyone talking over each other, it just becomes chaotic, and we won't have really effective learning happening. We will ask you to turn on your microphone from time to time, but as a default, it should be turned off. And once these two things have been done, you can then go ahead and join the classroom. If we step back though, before you even go into the lesson itself, there's a few things you should think about. And the first is to think about where you're actually going to set up your computer. Try and set it up somewhere that's quiet and free from distractions. So you don't want to be set up on the couch while your mum's watching Days of Our Lives or whatever that is. You probably want to be somewhere quiet, but also somewhere where you'll be effectively able to work. So probably set it up at a desk. You don't want to be lying on your bed or something like that. So quiet, free from distractions. The second thing is make sure you're clothed appropriately. Even though we're telling you to turn the cameras off, there's always a chance it could get turned on for whatever reason. So make sure that you're dressed appropriately for school. I think it kind of goes without saying. We don't need to talk about that one anymore. The third one, and probably one of the more important ones, is make sure you've got a pair of working headphones. They don't cost very much. You can pick them up from the supermarket or from Officeworks. Make sure that the ones that you pick up have got a microphone on them. A lot of laptops have got built-in microphones, but they're usually not fantastic quality. So having a set of headphones that have a microphone attached is really, really important. A lot of people have AirPods, so it's really important. It's integral that they're charged at the beginning of the day and they're charged whenever they're not being used. I'd also recommend probably having a second pair of wired headphones, just in case anything happens, your batteries run out. On your AirPods, you can just plug in the wired ones straight away. During the lesson itself, when you have a question, you obviously can't just call it out because your microphone's turned off, and it'll just be chaotic and actually quite disruptive for the teacher if everyone just kept turning on their microphones and talking. So a really good policy to have is that you just type your question into the chat in your group chat, and then the teacher can just respond to that. And if they're unsure of what you're actually trying to say, they can ask you to turn on your microphone and clarify what your question is, or give some more follow-up information so they can answer your query properly. Questions are really, really an important part of any classroom, and we definitely want questions to continue happening while we're in an online space, but it's really, really important that we do them in a way that allows the class to function properly and is done in a way that everyone can hear the question and everyone has a chance to ask questions as well. Some students, though, are really slow typers and they might struggle with spelling. So what I'd recommend is having a general question. Those students type it out beforehand in a Word document and copy it with Control-C. And then all you have to do is just do Control-V into our chat and hit enter. And it could be something as simple as, could I please ask a question? And then the teacher can just call your name and say, okay, no problem, turn on your microphone, let's hear your question. So remember that when you're asking questions, the best way is just to do it in the chat. Microsoft Teams are working on a feature where you can click a button and put your hand up, but that is not yet out yet. So this is going to have to work until, this will have to do until we kind of get a feature like that in there. When we're typing our questions and comments in the chat, it's really, really important that we keep it relevant to the lesson. Good dialogue in that chat is going to be integral for a good lesson to work. But what we don't want to see is people just spamming the chat with irrelevant stuff, just saying hello to their friends. This is not the place for that. You guys have online chats that you can already do that. This is the classroom and it should stay kind of within that cognitive realm where we're thinking and we're talking about what we're learning. One of the reasons for that is that there's going to be some really, hopefully there's going to be some really good conversation in that chat. And if people are spamming it, those meaningful conversations, those intelligent insights are going to get lost in just the noise of the spam. Because one of the really fantastic things about online learning, unlike face-to-face learning, if someone asks a question or says a really insightful comment, it's then gone and you never really get that back again. But here, when it's typed, it's going to be there forever. Everything that you type in that chat appears in comments underneath the meeting on our main team post afterwards. So they're all still there. So it's a really fantastic way that you can kind of go back when you think, oh, what did that person say that made me think this? I can go back to the comments and I can read it. And that becomes really, really hard if people have just spammed the chat with absolute rubbish and absolute nonsense. So make sure that you're keeping the spam, you don't spam the chat at all, and keep that chat space for kind of cognitive discussion around whatever the learning is about in class. There's also going to be questions outside of that little video meeting at the beginning of the class. So the best way to kind of go about that is don't private message your teacher or don't email your teacher. Instead, ask them the questions in the main post section of the team page. And the reason we're doing this, or the reason that this is a good idea, is it means that everyone can see the answers and the teachers don't need to keep repeating themselves. There's nothing worse than having to answer the same question like 15 times. And the only thing that would make that worse is actually having to do that by typing. So after the little video conference at the beginning of the session, that'll pop up as a post and everyone's comments will be underneath it. And so you just type your question into that. So you can see here there's a little reply button. Click on that little reply. What I'd be doing is tagging your teacher as well so they get the notification that you're asked a question. So you can tag them just by doing the @ symbol and then start writing their name, and it will pop up, and then just click on it and then write your question. That way they'll get notified that you've got a question and then they'll respond to it. So what you also should be doing before you ask a question is having a quick skim through to make sure no one has already asked a question. Read, because there's nothing worse than, once again, having to type in, please see the above answer to the question that has already been answered. So have a quick skim through what other people have asked and the responses that are in there, and you might find you might not even need to ask the teacher at all. So with just these few rules, hopefully we'll all have really successful online classrooms.